There's two legal theories. There's the lien theory and the title theory. Florida is a lien theory state, and my little memory crutch for that is FL. L stands for lien. In a lien theory state, the borrower retains the title and the lender's protected with a lien. In a title theory state, title is conveyed to the lender through a mortgage deed or trustee through a deed of trust, and the borrower retains equitable title. So in Florida, when we close, we get the real honest-to-God deed. The deed is what states and is the legal evidence of ownership. Now, why in the world would a bank loan us $200,000-$300,000 to buy a house and give us the ownership? They have no collateral. That's where the mortgage comes in. There's two parts. There's a promissory note and there is a mortgage. The promissory note is our evidence of debt. The mortgage is the collateral for the bank to be able to come and take our house if we don't pay. In a title theory state, that's like when you buy a car. You get some evidence of ownership, but you don't get the pink slip until it's paid off. Two instruments are involved in a mortgage loan. You have the promissory note, which is the promise to repay, and the mortgage, which creates the lien interest. The promissory note is the promise to repay. It's the evidence of debt with the terms of the loan. The mortgage is a written instrument that pledges the property as collateral. Hypothecation is the pledging of property as security without surrendering the possession. So you have pledged it as collateral, but you still get to live in it. Parties to a mortgage. There's the mortgagor and the mortgagee. Now these sound like they should be opposite of what I'm telling you, but they're not. So they're used a lot of times in questions because it's expected that you will get them mixed up. So, mortgagor is the borrower. They give the mortgage as the security to repay. So, a borrower gives the mortgage to the lender. The lender is the receiver, and they own the mortgage. Remember, ors give, es receive. And in this instance, the borrower is giving the mortgage to the lender who's receiving it. The borrower's covenants in a mortgage is the promise to repay. They're going to pay the taxes and the liens, keep property insurance on it, occupy the property as what's required by the lender. Maintenance and covenant of good repair. They're going to keep it in good repair and maintain it. And the covenant against removal. The covenant against removal is basically there because of back in the debacle. Everybody stripped out of the house, everything they could. They were selling toilets in yard sales and all kinds of stuff like that. So that's kind of what they're talking about, covenant against removal. They're not saying you can't change out a light fixture and put a new ooey fancy one in. That's not what it's talking about at all. There are really some important provisions in your mortgage. There's the prepayment clause. That's included in FHA and VA mortgages. It states that you can prepay early on the mortgage without penalty. On the other hand, some loans have a prepayment penalty clause. Usually that's when somebody's got an adjustable rate mortgage where the interest rate is really low, maybe below market value, and the bank anticipates you keeping the loan for X amount of years so they can make that lost interest up, per se. If you want to sell or pay off the house before that time frame, they're going to charge you what they call a prepayment penalty. They're going to get their money one way or the other is what it says. Okay, acceleration clause means upon default, the bank accelerates the entire debt due. It's pay all or nothing. You always have a right to reinstate, catch everything up. You can keep your house. Now, a due on sale clause is included on conventional loans, and a due on sale clause means that the loan is not assumable. So conventional loans are not assumable. FHA and VA loans are assumable and therefore do not have a due on sale clause. The defeasance clause is a clause in a mortgage that states that the lender must record a satisfaction of mortgage within 60 days after the loan has been paid off. Mortgage lien priority. Priority is normally determined by the order the liens are recorded, with the exception of construction liens. Construction liens are allowed to be placed at the date in which the contractor first either delivered goods or services to the location. And a subordination agreement is used to voluntarily take a lower priority, where someone may have been in second place for whatever reason. They have a subordination agreement in their paperwork that says they'll go into third place rather than second place. Mortgage features include down payment, loan-to-value ratios, equity, current market value minus mortgage debt, interest, and interest is defined as the cost for use of borrowed funds, loan servicing, impound accounts. Impound accounts is an escrow account for monthly installments of property taxes and hazard insurance. PITI stands for principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, discount points, and loan origination fees. All right, a math problem. Aaron purchased a home with a down payment of $50,000 and a loan of $275,000 at 4.37% for 20 years. Monthly payments are $1,768.74. What is the loan to value? The formula for this question is loan amount divided by value. So you need to find what the loan amount is and what the value of the property is and divide it accordingly. Now, if you want to, go ahead and pause the slide, take a moment, try to do it before you review the answer. All right. The question itself told you what the loan value was. It's $275,000, but it didn't tell you what the sales price of the house was. So if you take the deposit of $50,000 and the loan value of $275,000 and add it up, it's $325,000. So you simply take $275,000 divided by $325,000 and you get an 85% loan to value ratio. And a memory crutch for this one is when you're looking for something less than 100%, you're always dividing the little number by the big number. The next math problem is principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. This question says a mortgage loan calls for monthly principal payments and interest of $2186.25. The lenders is requiring the borrowers to pay property taxes and hazard insurance in advance. It's going to be an escrowed account. Remember the word impound account? This is what we're talking about. So what this math problem wants you to do is to calculate the borrower's PITI based on an annual estimate of property taxes being $2,850 and annual hazard insurance being $1,680. This is a lot simpler than it sounds. All you're going to take is the principal and interest payment, which is the $2186.25. You're going to add 1/12 of $2,850 and 1/12 of $1,680 to it. Go ahead and pause the slide, take a moment, try to work the problem, and then go forward. So the taxes, $2,850 divided by 12 was $237.50. Insurance, $1,680 divided by 12 is $140. The principal and interest base was $2186.25. All you're going to do is take $237.50 and $140, add it to the $2186.25, and you come up with $2,563.75. Calculating loan origination fees. Mary's mortgage lender is going to charge her an origination fee of 1.75% on a new mortgage loan of $375,000. This math problem wants you to calculate what's that fee going to cost Mary. It's a simple multiplication problem. You're just going to take the 375, multiply it times 1.75%. $375,000 times 1.75%. The loan origination fee is $6,562.50. Discount points. What are discount points? This usually gives students a lot of problems, and it really shouldn't. It's just because it sounds foreign to you. Math is really very simple. A lot of people fear the math, so here's a good time to stop and talk about it. There's only 4 things you can do with math: add, subtract, multiply, and divide. And math is very much like a recipe. Okay, it's just like when you ask somebody for the recipe for the dish they brought to the office party. Okay, you're going to look at that recipe probably 3 or 4 times before you have it memorized. Then after that, you can put the recipe away. A math problem is the same thing. Keep looking at it, do the math over and over until you have the recipe memorized. So with that, let's talk about discount points. Discount points is an upfront fee to increase the real yield or annual percentage rate to the lender. It allows the lender to increase return without increasing the contract interest rate. Each point is equal to 1% of the loan amount, not purchase price, the loan amount. The example they give you, on a $120,000 loan, for which the lender's going to charge 3 points, they want you to find the cost of the points. This is what they're going to have to pay at closing to get this interest rate reduced. So, 3 points, each point equals 1%. You take $120,000 times 3%, and it equals $3,600. Not too difficult, huh? Now let's talk about the lender's yield. Interest rates and APR, which stands for annual percentage rate, is always different. An annual percentage rate is always higher. The reason why this is because of the Truth in Lending Act requires lenders to tell us of our true cost of lending. So the interest rate is what we're charged on the unpaid principal balance. The APR per year is that interest rate plus all the charges that the lender charged us in order for us to be lent that money. So naturally, it's going to be higher. It's kind of like you've got your base price for an item and your sales tax. So your base price might be $3.99, but the time you pay it is $4.17. But you really only paid $3.99 because your taxes made it go up to $4.17. I hope that wasn't too confusing. So let's start out. Each discount point that's paid, each one of those 1% are going to equal 1/8 of a percent added to the initial interest rate that the lender's actually making. Okay? The borrower's not being charged that. They're being charged the interest rate on the unpaid balance, but the true money that the lender made, they make an extra 1/8 of 1% for each point charged. So on the example where the lender charged those 3 points for $120,000, the borrower was able to get a 4% interest rate. So that's what they're paying. They're paying 4% on their unpaid balance. But in reality, when it's all said and done, the lender actually made 4 3/8% on that loan. Because 3 points, 1/8% each, means that's 3/8% added to the 4%. The easiest way to do this and the easiest way for me to memorize this when I was taking it, I thought of the 8 as a snowman. So to me, lender's yield equals points over snowman. There was 3 points in this problem. 8's your snowman. 3 over 8 plus the interest rate, 4 3/8%. There are different ways to purchase property that's encumbered by an existing mortgage loan. One is subject to the mortgage. That's where the buyer is not personally liable to the debt. Another is the assumption of an existing mortgage. The seller is still liable on the original promissory note. However, if novation is introduced, remember we talked about novation, that's the agreement that makes the buyer solely responsible in event of default. A due-on-sale clause, remember they're in conventional loans, they prevent the sale subject to mortgage. Okay, they're not assumable. So conventional loans could not be assumed because of the due-on-sale clause. And the purpose of an estoppel certificate is to notify where one ends and one begins when they're, cutting off when the owner owns it to the new owner owning it. That's the estoppel certificate. How much is owed, what's the interest rate, what's payments up to date, that sort of thing. Assignment of mortgage. That's when ownership of a mortgage is transferred from one company or individual to another. Again, the estoppel certificate verifies the amount of the unpaid balance, interest rate, and date to which the interest has been paid prior to the assignment. When the seller finances, that's called a contract for deed. Other names for it is land contract, agreement for deed, or installment sale contract. When the seller's financing, it usually requires a small down payment, and the buyer makes the payment to the seller. The seller retains legal title until the loan is repaid. Now, if it's recorded, the buyer gets equitable title and can file for a homestead exemption. Land development. When building subdivisions, a blanket mortgage is a mortgage that pledges a number of parcels, usually building lots as security for the loan. So the developer goes out and buys a hunk of land, and that blanket mortgage covers all those lots. Okay? The developer is going to use proceeds from individual sale of lots to pay off the blanket mortgage. Now, if the blanket mortgage has a partial release clause in it, which is commonly found in blanket mortgages, that provides for the release of individual parcels from that blanket mortgage upon payment of that specific amount. What that means is, the best way to describe it, if you were around during the debacle and you remember all the subdivisions that are like partly built or a little bit built, maybe they have 10 houses in them, and you drive by and you see a big sign that says auction Saturday, whatever. Okay, that auction was only for the undeveloped properties. The people who had purchased houses and had them built were released from that mortgage. Their homes were safe. That's what the partial release clause does. It gives them a marketable title. Otherwise, it would have been included and their house would have went with the auction as well. Les pendants, what is that? That's a notice that's recorded in public records of pending legal action involving real estate. And it's constructive notice because it's recorded. Usually that's what you get when they're ready to foreclose on you. You get a little knock on the door and you're served. Short sale. A short sale is where the net proceeds at closing will not satisfy the payoff amount of mortgages and other liens on the property. And the seller is actually selling the home for an amount less than the amount owed to the lender. Now, if the borrower defaults, there's going to be a foreclosure. What happens is they initiate a suit on the promissory note. They sue on the note, they obtain a judgment, then execute the judgment against any real or personal property. Then comes the foreclosure proceeding. They foreclose on the property, and it's sold at a foreclosure sale. And caveat emptor, which means buyer beware, applies to a purchase at a foreclosure sale. Sometimes the parties will agree to settle the default without going to court, and this can be accomplished with a deed in lieu of foreclosure. The process is sometimes called a friendly foreclosure because it is a non-judicial procedure. A mortgager can prevent foreclosure by paying principal and interest plus collection expenses. This is called the equity of redemption. However, the right ends once the property has been sold at the foreclosure sale. Income property. With income property, there is a receivership clause in a mortgage, which allows a receiver to be appointed to collect the income from the property and use the income to make mortgage payments in the event of default. That's like a strip center. People, rent the different shops. They have their own businesses in there. And if the owner of that strip center goes into default, the court comes in and appoints a person to collect, a receiver. And so the money is now paid directly to that receiver, the bank or whomever that's designated, rather than to the owner of the strip center. And that money is used to make up the mortgage payments.